So my name's Stuart Easton. I'm one of the founders here at TransparentChoice. And this session sort of grew out of conversations that, David, you and I have been having forever around governance and things like that, right? And governance, I don't know about you guys, but it just doesn't sound sexy, doesn't sound exciting. But when you start talking about, are you a value center or a cost center, that gets your attention. And actually the difference between the two very often is actually how you do governance, right? You can call it governance, you can talk about portfolio management, you can call it all sorts of different things. You could call it benefits realization. Fundamentally, they're all kind of the same thing. And the difference between a value center and a cost center is really how much you focus on delivering the value. It's right there in the word. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to throw some ideas around. David has a really interesting framework that he's been building with a community of real experts over the last year or two that he's going to share with us a little bit, just a little bit, not too much, a little bit. Yeah, we've got a little timer ready for you, David. So David, you can introduce yourself in a minute. So David's going to kick off with a little bit of sort of a formal presentation, if you like. We're then going to move on to Alexander David. And again, Alexander, you can introduce yourself when we get to that point. He's going to share with us a case study where they really went from that kind of cost center, kind of a PMO that was not necessarily doing very much other than just kind of administering lots of money being spent, and turned it into something that really delivered value. And then Dan is going to show us a couple of little bits of software that support what the guys are going to tell you about, that sort of illustrate how that might look, right? So it's not really a demo. It's not, we do those, we'll have another webinar on that. So if you want a demo, there'll be another webinar where we do a demo, but really just to kind of highlight and just to give you a little insight into what it might actually look like and feel like when you're able to do some of these things. So without any further ado, no, not quite without any further ado, one more ground rule, which is the more interactive this is, the more interesting it's going to be for you and for us. So I really, really want you guys to jump in. If you agree with something that one of the speakers says, let us know. If you disagree, let us know. If you recognize a problem that somebody's talking about, let us know. Ask questions, challenge the ideas. All right, there's no monopoly on wisdom on this call. So with that, and I promise with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to David to get us started. Here we go. Fabulous.
Right. I hope everyone's sitting comfortably as I'll begin. Hello, my name's David. What am I? I'm the founder of a little community interest company called the Business Integrated Governance CIC. We've developed this framework for connecting from purpose to vision to strategy to delivery and back again. You can look that up and have a poke around what all that stuff is in your own time. I'm today here looking to offer you some thoughts and ideas. I'm going to paint a scenario just to enable me to make a few points, and then hopefully offer you a future and bigger vision for what a PMO might be, which enable folks to offer value like you've never seen, if I can be so bold. Right, I'm trying to move the screen on. I'm not succeeding. Do I have control, Stuart?
There you go. I'll do that. There you go.
Oh yeah, okay.
I'll do it for you.
Okay, so stereotype alert, folks. I'm going to offer you a scenario. This I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence or be condescending, but many of us who work in PMOs or use PMOs or connect the PMOs, we love PMOs. We respect them. They're absolutely fundamental necessities of business. They're all different shapes and sizes. If they were birds, they'd be chickens and ducks and all kinds of different animals. There's no way easily to describe a PMO. It would just insult somebody. So I'm not going to try and go there. But in a nutshell, our PMOs define what project management is to us, and are the owners of all of that good practice. They provide support and expertise to our organizations so they can do these things called projects effectively and efficiently. They'll help us be compliant because we're not always good boys and girls for how we should behave on projects. And they'll provide some analysis and reporting. They're often a really good function that adds a lot of value in itself. So, next build, Stuart. An interesting quote somebody said to me once, and I love this one, is that a lot of PMOs patch the gaps between how you should work and how you do work, and are very, very valuable to us to behave ourselves and to enable the machinery to connect and behave. So that's not a trivial thing. That's really important. But I think a lot of our PMOs are really focused on supporting effectiveness and efficiency, on helping the operation, and that's the next little build, Stuart, which is there. So that's a really, I think for a lot of PMOs that's their true mission. That they help the business to be effective and efficient. I think I can control now. Yay! So how do these PMOs come about? Again, another stereotype alert, just to be able to make a point. Well, many of us are in organizations that perhaps get a really big project, a really important project, and we need a team to help that to happen. And we'll set up a PMO to help us organize and run and be the wrapper around that project. And we do such a good job that we perhaps get the chance to do that for more projects, and maybe our role formalizes to include program management, where we need to add further value with managing dependencies between projects and the business, managing benefits to help us achieve outcomes, and we grow and we offer more value as our time goes by. We may further grow and not just do a number of projects for a collection or a program. May take on a function for a department and start to do things like manage resources, plan and schedule resources for projects, and negotiate availability and allocations between projects and their other business as usual commitments. And latterly, if we do a fantastic job, we may be pulled into doing this role to being the overall project function for our organization. And that's a very simplistic and basic life cycle there. But this is happens a lot. If you've seen this, please chat. Put something in the comments to back this up, but I've seen this many times. But the focus here seems to be on efficiency and effectiveness, getting the PMO to grow to be more efficient and effective. But I guess the challenge is that as our PMOs get bigger, they become more expensive. Are we always able, through efficiency and effectiveness, to persuade the business that we're as useful as our expense warrants? And hence, I think one of the quotes in the preamble was that too often PMOs are viewed as a cost center. Is that because they're really aiming at helping the business be efficient and effective, as opposed to offering bigger and better value statements? Just hold that thought for the moment. So the question then is, my proposition to you is that there'll come a point when efficiency and effectiveness, that benefit case for a PMO, or whatever we call it, the benefit case kind of starts to run out of puff, because we can only make the business so much more efficient and effective, perhaps we should start looking for other forms of value than efficiency and effectiveness. And let's explore that a little bit further. So the answer then is, how about we develop our ePMO, or whatever we call it, to be a more broad and deep business support function, which doesn't just help us run the projects effectively, but starts to connect up strategy to delivery. It becomes a true strategic integration body and offers services and assistance to more senior level sponsors that enable us to truly connect the business to what we do as project and programs. And we all probably are aware of one incarnation of that, project portfolio management, the ability to look at a selection of projects, look at their value and look at their cost, and to help our organization make good decisions about what we do. That's the first incarnation of this kind of function. It's where we can start to add true value beyond the efficiency and effectiveness message. But we can go a lot further than that. We can go further. We're doing the benefits and value and resource management within project world, if we're talking project portfolio management. But can we go past that? Can we go past the hierarchy of project? And can we start to reach out into the business and do some of these things that we deliver as a service for projects to other business functions? Can we provide assistance with realization, resource management, dependency management across business as usual activity, around product development activity, as well as change? And can we further help us connect from the very senior level goals that the business has to the objectives those break down into, and start to connect projects, programs, and the business to enable us to balance between what we do in change, what we do in product creation, as what we do day to day? Is that a function that we can grow, a capability we can grow our PMOs in? I think it is. Can we do it? And does the business want us to? That's a key question. So what might that look like? Drawing it as a picture, this is a little picture here of our project portfolio. We've got a number of projects. Our EPMO, our program function, is happily supporting these projects. We're operating them. They're efficient, they're effective, they're all good. But can we start to focus on the value that these projects give? Here's value add number one, the project portfolio management function. Can we get our projects to focus on not just the milestones and tasks that they're operating on, but the value statements and the value measures and value forecasts that those projects and programs have? We may do that partially right now, but can we make that a more formalized function? And can we further then maybe offer that more widely to the business and start to look at all of the objectives and key results that our business has, and not just apply that benefit and value management to project objectives, but help the other business areas do it on their product creation or business as usual value objectives? Seems like a natural extension of the kind of things a PMO can do to me, that does to me. And if we've extended to have a PMO, or whatever we now call it, to look at these objectives and help us deliver value against those objectives, can we start to make that connection more formal and more visible and stronger between very high level objectives and what our projects and programs and all of our business units need to do? Is this now adding true business value? I'll pause there for a second. So how might this happen? So we've talked about our EPMO. Maybe we were on our journey towards our EPMO and we were moving towards that overall EPMO function. But perhaps now, if we're going to start looking at objectives across wider business areas, we need perhaps to look at a slightly more senior business sponsor. And clearly sponsors are important for our change portfolio. So we need a senior sponsor for our portfolio management to add value across our programs. And perhaps we even would like to, if we're going to now step up further and offer that service to the wider business and connect up to the senior level goals that we have, there's an even more senior level sponsor. And with a more senior level sponsor comes more senior level value to realize and more senior level funding for us to benefit from. Is there then an approach where we can change from suffering from difficulty in achieving ROI to continue our services, to actually starting to really show big value through big sponsors, that we really add big value through what we do? And does this PMO, whatever it's now called, become that valuable generator of impact for their organization? So in conclusion of these thoughts then, we can only say, I would suggest we can only add so much value as a traditional PMO, whatever that is, with efficiency and effectiveness. Project portfolio management is that great first step where we can start to show a business value through value realization around projects. But can we step a bit more wider than that and offer value around objectives and targets around business functions, not just projects? And can we use our integrated governance-based approach to connect that for the business? Is that an inspiring picture that a frustrated PMO lead can think about to how they might add greater and wider value?
I think, David, just to add to what you just said, I think is the word integrated. That's the key point over here. We have lots of governance, and what most companies I've seen doing is they put bandage over each governance. They see governance as a meeting to have this conversation with people, but actually the governance needs to be more integrated, decision focused, and driving value for the business. So that word integrated is really key in most of the organizations I've been in, because people see just business governance, not integrated. So they don't really speak to each other, and then you just have multiple meetings running across the business.
So for me, this is a great way to add value for a PMO, to operate that integrated governance and to broaden out into supporting business functions as well as connecting with leadership groups.
Some of the chat going on is about how do we get stakeholders to pay attention, right? How do we shift the perception of what a PMO is, right? Senior leaders don't really know what the PMO is. They don't know what it could be. They don't understand that it's actually a real business function, right? It's a strategy execution function. It's not a project execution function. It's a strategy execution function, if you like. So Alexander, this might be a good time to jump across into the case study, and maybe we can pull some of those issues, tease some of those issues out. How did you, as you go through it, how did you engage the senior stakeholders? What was in it for them? What was the thing that really got them motivated to join you on the journey?
Thank you, Stuart. I think just a quick one about me. So I'm, again, CEO and founder of a small company called Value Matrix. It's in the name, as you could imagine, value. I've been in the PMO industry for the last 12 plus years in either enterprise PMO or setting up portfolio functions in lots of industries. You can name it, from automotive to pharmacy, pharmaceuticals, or to infrastructure and banking. I think there's a typo there, Value Max. I think I quite like the name of that company, actually. I should. But I think, to be honest, I think most of the questions coming in which I'm seeing right now is, how do we make PMO to stand out? How do we make stakeholders understand why you need a PMO? They see this as a new concept. They don't really get it. They see project managers are PMO. Or, to be honest, I think this is the same problem we keep seeing in most of the organization. A lots of organizations. The one I'm currently in GE, they have the same problem. And so I'm here to give you an example, but I think I'll keep saying this to Stuart quite a few times. I think he hates me keep repeating the same thing. The case for change. That's the step one of getting the organization to understand the value of PMO, because organization focus is increasing the margin, growing the business, and making more money and making the business profitable, which is rightly so. But they need to, what the role of the case for change is to translate what's the value PMO will bring in that journey. And that's the example over here we did with Direct Line, is the focus of the organization is to increase the share prices, be more profitable, and grow the business. And that's exactly what we did. But we worked backwards on all those triggers and had a starting point is, do we have a case for change? Does the organization understand the value a high value PMO can bring? So we created a case for change, get the sponsor around, and created that with him, what's in it for each functions, all the MDs. What that given them is that understanding, if they do the PMO right, these are the benefits they'll be accruing in those functions. And then for the business as well, what the cross-functional benefits having a PMO will deliver. And one of the things I normally say to most organizations that go in is, it's not a PMO change, it's a business change, because PMO is there to serve the business. It's not cost center. Going back to our topic earlier, it's not cost center, it's a value driver to the business or value advisor. So step one, as I said, we start with the case for change with outline, getting all the leadership behind this change, what's in it for them. But rather than creating this 12-month big plan of saying, let's make this big bang change, the way we did it, we said, we're going to do 3-month sprints, a 90-day sprint to deliver the value. And the reason behind doing this is because the trust comes from change and change comes from trust. So picking up 2 or 3 things which are high value, pain points for the organization, it's delivering them in the first 3 months, get that trust so they understand, okay, by investing in PMO, we're getting the values. I think we should do more of this. So they invest more time and money on going in the journey, rather than having a big plan and you suddenly appears out of nowhere in 12 months' time, here we go, there's a PMO there, but nobody's involved. Nobody has any input into this. They don't get the value, what they need. So doing in those 3 months sprints, get organization behind it. They see the change, they see the values, and they understand of investing more time into it. So that's exactly what we did. But with Direct Line, we focus purely on getting the portfolio management right, the strategic portfolio management in the first 3 months, which is your front end of the business. How do we make sure our requirements are right? How do we make sure how the sales coming through? What's the margin we're having? The portfolio reporting, the governance, demand and capacity management, all those capabilities we address in the first 3 months. So we have a clear visibility of what's happening in the business. And what that did was that bring all the leaders together, because now they have a more visibility of what's happening and they need more of this. And that what helped is we started doing in the next 3 months, we started looking at projects and programs. Okay, what do we need to improve our controls and governance in our projects and programs to optimize the delivery? Then at the 3 months after, we started looking at have we got the right tool in place to optimize and provide the right injections of information to our leaders and the stakeholders. So by doing those 3 months, what that did in the end, where we started seeing the share prices going up, and we started seeing the performance and the productivity gone up by 2%. So those are the key things, and we realized, and we played it back to the business, and they saw the value.
So a couple of quick points there. So what I've noticed here is that you're not talking about projects and project deliverables. You're talking about the business outcomes that the business wants, right? So that's the first thing. So I think Annette, if you're listening, I sent you a little private message. If you take a look for that, that would be brilliant. But so the first step, I think, is actually a little bit of a mindset shift for a lot of the industry. And I had this conversation last week with a couple of board members of the PMI. They were kind of saying, what do you think the PMI should do differently? And my first answer is, we need to shift the culture from being about project deliverables to being about business value and the KPIs that are driving the business. And do you know what? I think that one statement is probably the biggest summary, the quickest summary of your big framework that there is, David, right? That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. It's about shifting that mindset from being about project delivery to being an organization that, whatever you call it, whether you call it PMO or VMO, I don't care, right? Call it whatever you like. But the key thing is to focus it on and have that mindset shift onto that business value. So it's interesting. Some of the comments in the background. Some of the comments in the background were about having the right metrics in place to measure performance. And I'd be really interested, I forget who it was that said that, somebody made that comment. I'd be interested to ask the audience, do you think those metrics should be PMO project delivery metrics, or should the performance be measured by the performance of the business, right? Should the PMO be measured by the performance, the impact that you have on the business? Think about that. See what you think. Get a quick poll. So just pop it in, pop into the chat. Project if you think the metric should be project centric, and business if you think the PMO should be judged on the impact on the business, the actual business KPIs, not the PMO KPIs. So anyone, value-driven KPIs, not project deliverables. Well done, Israr. I'm with you on that one. Anyone brave enough to say the opposite? Because you're going to get flamed, right? If you do.
Well, Stuart, I think it's really important that any operational function, it needs to be measured as to how it functions, so it's managed effectively. So I would say the normal metrics of however any function is working, but you need the output. So I'll then quickly correct myself and suggest it's to do with business value measures.
Yeah, and I think actually Ricard made the point that it's a little bit of both, right? You're quite right, Ricard, right? So the reason that we do all this stuff is to deliver the business value. So that in my book is the primary metric, but project metrics may be leading indicators to help you see whether or not you're likely to deliver that business value. So I'm not saying that those project metrics are worthless. But the measure of success isn't that you managed to deliver on the triple constraint. It's that you managed to shift the share price in your case, Alexander, right?
I think, to be honest, I think it's most organizations have too many KPIs. You can name it. I've seen 30, 40 KPIs in the list. It's part of the case for change, and I keep saying that word, is understanding what the 3 and 4 KPIs where you can actually measure, because some KPIs you can't measure them. You know, it will just give you, are you heading in the right direction? It shows you the trend. But there are some core values you can measure. And most of the 3 sprints, so I was talking about earlier, though, running those change in 3 sprints, you start with a baseline, you know, where we are, what the problems we're facing. And each 3 months, you check and balance, have we delivered the value? Are we seeing the changes? So the KPIs around the case for change is really important as well. So the business can see the value of having a PMO and what change they're delivering. And obviously, the KPIs for the business are really important as well.
Alexander, can I ask you a question? Because the one thing that always intrigues me, and I won't dwell honestly, is why are PMOs asked to justify themselves? Were you as a PMO proposing to the business what you did, or was the business going, we need this of a support function? Which way round does this work?
I think it's a bit of both, basically. There is always, people have pain points across the organization. And it's understanding and creating that group around change champions, I call them. So when I'm in the organization, I normally go from the outside, coming in, helping the organizations, and I work with the exec to create that case for change. So why we need it, why we need to invest. But I've done both sides. When I was actually in the company doing this job, and I said, we need a PMO, we need to do something. We created a change network. On that basis, we created a case for change together with the team, presented to a sponsor who was willing to talk. So, and then creating that sponsor will help to actually voice to the other exec to say, actually, guys, if we do it this way, this will help. But internally, I think it's looking out for people, because I'm sure there's not just yourself having the same problem. There'll be other departments, engineering, procurement, commercial, sales, name it. They all will be having problems by not having a right PMO.
Super. So I tell you what, I spotted Annette join this webinar and jumped onto chat and asked if she would kindly give us a few minutes on her experience. So Annette's been on this journey over the last 2-3 years, something like that, Annette. So Annette, unlike David and Alexander, Annette is not polished, a polished thought, out there doing the conference circuit and all that kind of stuff. This is a real story from a real PMO, just like you. So Annette, off you go. Tell us a little bit about where you started, where you've got to, and how you got there. What were some of the challenges you faced? And this thing about sponsorship, I think, seems to be the question that everybody's really interested in.
So Annette Smith, and didn't prepare any slides because I just got pulled in here. But about 5 years ago, 2019, I started the PMO, creating the PMO office with the CTO. And he was my sponsor and supporter through this whole journey. At that time, we created little portfolios. We had about 40 IT people, and each divided into separate teams, and we would pick and choose the projects that we worked on and not really have any visibility to the business. I mean, we didn't provide any visibility to business, what we were working on or why we were working on the projects that we worked on. So then about 3 years ago, we found TransparentChoice and also found PMO strategies. So we did a very hard work for 6 months where we actually worked on getting project prioritization set up. We learned what questions do you have to ask when people take the assessments. And we started educating the business. So it was weekly slides. It was weekly meetings, just presenting what it is we were doing, why we were doing it. So we really set up like 3 buckets of projects, and it was improvements, strategic, and essential projects that we created. And we had the business involved in coming up with what is important for business. So we shifted from this is what IT wants to work on to this is what we're going to support our business with. And getting them involved really helped. And them seeing, so we have assessments where they actually assess what are the projects that we really should be working on. And now we have this report we can show to them, to the business, to the executives, and they see, okay, this is how we voted or assessed these projects. And IT is actually working on those projects and not cherry picking anymore. So we limit the whole cherry picking and the squeaky wheels. We still have the squeaky wheels in business, but we have now proof that, you know, you were involved in this process. You had your voice in there. However, this project is low on the list to be done. And this provides a lot more value to the business. So we have, by doing this and by showing the business that we are now working on what supports you, has been tremendous. It could not have been done had I not had the executive sponsor that I had. So it is super important to get that buy-in and get that help promoting it, because usually you are just a PMO of one with a couple of PMs. And business did see us as, why do we need this department? I mean, this is just overhead in the beginning, until they actually saw the value. So now they're actually seeking out our help. And they're still trying to get around, you know, the prioritization, but that is really like us saying that's not what we're going to be working on. And they understand that now. So
the quote that I remember when we interviewed you before, Annette, the quote you said, it was something like, we now, you know, it used to be the squeaky wheel, and what you said a minute ago, and then you said, and now it's the PMO working for the business with the business. And that really stuck with me, because that's, in fact, I've got goosebumps again just saying it, because that is such a profound shift, right? From being about us just delivering projects to us really focusing on delivering business value to the organization and to key stakeholders. So that's fantastic. So thank you for that. Thank you for agreeing to do that with no notice whatsoever, Annette. I didn't realize you were going to join today, so that's fantastic, and hopefully that helps people kind of put it into context. You know, this you know, David is you know, an author. He's founded several companies doing this kind of stuff, and you know, you don't need to be that kind of superhero. You can start wherever you are today and go on that journey. But at the heart of that journey is a focus on delivering business value. And of course, you've got to deliver projects to deliver the business value. But it's shifting that focus to being about the business value that seems to really be the trigger, both to help you win the executive sponsorship and be able to deliver the value. So let's move on. Thank you again, Annette. Everybody, please, virtual round of applause. Thank you, Annette. You did not. You had no warning for doing that, so that was, I'm very, very grateful. Dan, why don't you take over for a minute and just sort of show us what some of that might look like, what some of these little steps of governance that we were talking about might look like.
There's a whiz through, I guess, 3 steps of evolution that we see in the context of our software. Not because we're trying to do a demo step, but just so we want to kind of anchor that kind of progressive value journey, and in terms of what it means in terms of doing stuff. So we start here in the Kanban. This is where we organize our projects. And really the value here is around visibility, because you're creating visibility for stakeholders. So the initial value a PMO can have, and this might be right at the start of the journey, if you think back, for those of you that have been doing this for a while, it's just helping give your leadership group visibility of what's going on, what's the progression, what's the rationale behind it. So it's a basic organization step. It can be organizing on a Kanban. It can be also thinking about what's the value of the project in terms of what's the cost and what's it going to deliver. So you're starting to organize the projects. You're starting to, if you can say, get your ducks in a row. For those of you that have met us at a conference, you know we have a strange fascination with rubber ducks. And so this is about the basic organization of your project backlog. That's just the first step, right? The second step is around how we start to pivot towards value. So we've hopefully given people visibility. We've got some basic structure in place. There is huge value in that. But the next step is around defining value. Everyone likes to talk about value, value add, value for money. What we believe in is actually quantifying value to a point that you can then model it, use it, challenge yourself to deliver it. And, the way we do that in our software is a system called AHP. It's effectively multi-criteria modeling system. And it's pretty simple. You're basically saying there is more to value than the things in the finance director's spreadsheet. There's more to value than just margin, because there are some strategic components, there are some stakeholder components, there are deliverability and risk components. So you're trying to kind of bring together all those factors that matter when you pick projects and turn them into a quantifiable output that you can then use throughout your kind of portfolio planning cycle. So this is just an example of how we would do it in the software. I won't go into the whys and wherefores, but this is also the point at which you absolutely do what Annette just talked about, which is try and go after that senior level engagement. You get the real kind of C-suite engagement with what they're doing, because ultimately you're asking them to say, what do you want to achieve? Okay, how can we put that into a policy, into a framework that can give you the right projects? So this is an enabler for the leadership team to get what they want, to get their strategy executed. And it's, we put it into the software and it then sort of plugs into the organization. But again, sometimes clients are a bit reticent to ask the leadership group to participate. It's like, no, this is for them. They should be pushing you to do it. So sometimes you need that little bit of kind of bravery to kind of make that leap upwards and ask for that engagement with the selection process. That's the first sort of step. So we've got our basic visualization, we've got our definition of value, and you obviously play that process out through a scoring system where you score projects against that value framework. You then start to get into the space around optimization, selection. Because what you're able to do, you think we've got all that data together, we've quantified value, we've then effectively built this value matrix, right? We've said, what's the cost and what's the value? And what's the relationship between those two data points in the context of our portfolio or our potential portfolio? And what we're looking to do here, the simplest, quickest win, to Alexander's point, is picking the duff projects, the pet projects, the dead weight in our portfolio that isn't adding value. So it's the projects that everyone knows should be killed, can be killed, or the projects that have found their way into the backlog, but they really shouldn't be there, can just be stopped before they start sort of soaking up lots of resources. You're also creating this nice view of your portfolio. This is a ranking. So it's just saying, best value for money, worst value for money. So you're starting to really put some structure and order into your portfolio. And again, it's all about then delivering value, because down here you deliver value, up here you don't deliver value or don't deliver as much. So you're able to have that good rational conversation that drives your portfolio into a much better place.
And again, this is really where, Alexander, you started with the discussion around what are the KPIs of the business, right? And this is using those KPIs to really drive the portfolio.
Exactly. I think and that removes that silo within the business, because now everyone is focusing on the business KPIs rather than functional KPIs.
Yeah, and absolutely, and to that point, going back to these criteria will bear pretty close relations to the KPIs or that you want your portfolio to deliver. So you're almost baking the measurement into the selection process. Because actually, what you don't want is a selection process that's disassociated from the measurement process. Because one, it's doubling the work, and two, it's just creating this disjoint that's going to cause you, as the guy in the middle, grief. As we sort of evolve this push towards value creation as opposed to kind of purely cost center, the next step is around optimization. So this kind of, from a feature point of view, is where we're using AI to solve the backpack problem, or the knapsack problem as it's sometimes called, of going, I've got a bunch of resource, I've got a bunch of projects, what can I do? And this is the magic green button where we go, do you know what? With these constraints in place and these projects backlogged, we think this is the best combination of stuff that you can credibly put on your backlog. And there's a bunch of research out there that says, if you try and do everything, you'll do nothing. It's also kind of common sense, right? So you can start to have this, again, this step change in terms of return on your portfolio performance by saying no a lot more, but no in a kind of progressive way. And again, if you say no as a PMO, there's this danger you're seen as the baddie, who's somehow kind of throttling everyone's kind of best endeavors. No, this is actually to release the potential of your organization and do more.
And as Annette says, what this is doing is it gets you out of the business of saying no, and it lets the business make that decision, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, and there's huge value. It sounds silly, but it's almost like computer says no, or data says no. It's not PMO says no. So it's just, as the PMO, you're organizing the data, and you're the mirror. You're not the policeman. So you're just reflecting. This is the leadership's criteria. This is the expert scoring, and this is the best way we can deliver given the capacity we've got to work with. So it's kind of making the whole process rational but optimized. Yeah.
And Dan, that's what makes the data-driven decision making, isn't it?
Yeah, and that part of the reason you have data, and obviously we promote our software, but this is true of any kind of good data system. If people trust the data, it's that shared currency that enables you to collaborate much more effectively. If people don't trust the data, you are in so much trouble, because you're just going to spend all the time unpicking the data and challenging each other if you don't like the outcomes.
Yeah, keep going, Dan. Keep going.
Crack it. Fabulous. So the last step is just around this next level of optimization. So we've solved the backpack problem, and then we go into this next level of kind of nuance, which might be two components really. You go, well, one, have I got my resource in the right place? So most folks we talk to have this kind of balance of portfolios. You've got the kind of the must-do portfolio, the sort of BAU. You've got the growth portfolio. And part of good optimization is actually the ability to think about what's the best combination of resource allocation between those pots. And again, what we reckon is the best way to solve it is to use AI to support that, because actually the question executives want to answer is what if? What if? How the executives want more growth? Of course they do. Okay, what would I need to give up in my BAU portfolio in order to get 20% more projects done in my growth portfolio? Okay, let's go away and do that in, let's say, an hour, and actually build that portfolio out very quickly with the data. So we can then give that rational choice to the business. It says, what would you like, this growth or this risk? You choose between them. And that's what leadership is there to do. It's to make those choices. And the PMO, frankly, is there to give those choices in order to enable better decision making. And so part of it, and you can see it's there, very simple, kind of like how you share allocation out between the portfolios, and then you feed it into the optimization, fireworks go off, magic happens, and good things come. And the final sort of bit, we think about it is road mapping. So fantastic, we've got a plan, but actually if we just then, think of the London Marathon, if everyone tries to start at the same time, it's bloody chaos. What you've got to do, to Alex's point, is let the elite runners go first. You've got to let the best projects go first, so you're getting the highest value quickly. You've got to then stagger when people start, so they're not all kind of bumping into each other and causing chaos. So again, you're taking the data that you've been studiously collecting, but you're not collecting it because you like collecting data. You're collecting it because you want to be able to do this, because you want to be able to say, do you know what? We should start these projects because this sort of maps against our capacity, and there's a bit of operational research, sort of theory of constraints, and all that sits behind this. But the idea is, it's common sense, right? If you try and do everything all at the same time, you're going to make an absolute horlicks of it. So you stagger, and then final point: what do executives want? Executives want results. So this is results in the context of a P&L, but we know there are other components in value as well. And this is the portfolio we've just modeled. So this isn't sort of like crazy hockey stick stuff that says that I'm going to spend a bunch of money next year, but then don't worry, in 3 years' time, everything's going to be amazing. This is the project portfolio we've just built from the bottom up with good optimized logic, sensible scoring in place, mushed together in the context of, therefore, this is what it will deliver you. So you can then start to position your portfolio not as, hey, we're charging you 50 million quid. It is, do you want this set of outcomes from that investment you're making? And by the way, because we're doing it properly, we have much greater confidence in the actual outcome than you would have if you just kind of like crammed all the projects in and kept your fingers crossed. So there you go. That was a very quick run through.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Dan. So just before I open it up to questions, and do jump in with more questions. There've been a few questions on the way, but do jump in with more. Just before we do that, the key thing here is that governance is one of those words, like I said at the beginning, that for a lot of people it's a bit of a turnoff, right? It's not a very exciting word, but really it all it means is decision making. It means benefit realization. It means portfolio management. It means a whole bunch of these kinds of things. And so don't worry about the labels. The key thing, there are a couple of really big key things to take away, I think, from what we've heard today. So Alexander, from your piece to me, I took away 2 things. One was case for change, so to get that buy-in from leadership, and then sprints, right? So small value oriented sprints that are around delivering value. David, I from yours, I got a big takeaway around, this isn't just about traditional project management, right? You can take this discipline and apply it to the whole corporation, right? Because strategy doesn't just apply to our change projects; it applies everywhere in the organization. And so if you have a nice little framework that lets you make that happen. And again, I've put a link in the chat to the big BOK. We had another B as well. What did we have? We had a really brilliant alliterative phrase that we were using the other week, Dan. Can you remember what it was? It was
absolutely not.
Anyway. Oh well, never mind. Never mind. If it pops into my head, I'll put it in the chat. But the big BOK is great. It's a collaborative piece. And there are lots of other frameworks out there, right? Other frameworks are available. But the big BOK was created by a community of really, really, really smart people. Martin Samfire was on there and a whole bunch of others, right? So a whole community of people that contributed to that. Dan and I even had some very small contributions in there somewhere, and if that doesn't put you off, nothing will. So what I would love to do next is move into some Q&A. Give people a chance to get the Q&A. But David, just while people are thinking about what questions, I'm going to put the one that came up a couple of times, which is about sort of how do I sell this to the executives, right? So we've heard Alexander's take on it. What's your take on that?
There's 2 ways you can upsell your PMO. You can explain what you do and persuade everyone that you can do more of that and it will be really valuable. And that you should get more funding based on you doing a fantastic job and you doing all these metrics and these lovely reports. Or you can explain, well, we've got some capability here that we can help you connect that objectives hierarchy that Dan showed you through to what needs to happen for those objectives to be realized. And some of those will be done through change and some of those are done through project, so let's get that connection from business objective to projects nailed. But then many of those business objectives are not projects, but to hit the strategy, we need to get all those under control. So, Mr. COO, yes, please fund my PMO so I can carry on the service level I'm giving you, but I can offer you so much more, connect your strategy to delivery and help you with the outcomes that you need. This is what I can do for you, Mr. COO.
Perfect, thank you. All right, Abdul Rahman's got an absolute zinger here. So I don't know who wants to pick this one up, but how should you design a PMO? Now, I'll take a very quick stab, which is I'm going to answer that question not by telling you what the design should be, but by suggesting that designing your PMO is a process that's an evolution, right? That is driven by what value the business wants. So if in the early days, right, if you've got nothing and you don't even know how many projects you've got, then yeah, what does the business need? Then I would start by just give them visibility, right? If they don't have visibility, give them visibility. If you've already got visibility and the thing that's killing them is that projects are always failing, then your PMO should be about finding the root causes of failure and eliminating them, right? So Alex, have you got David threw in his one-liner? What's your
for me
30 seconds?
For me is I think three things which I've normally focused on. Stuart, you've seen this before, which is providing the visibility, greater execution, and clear and lean governance. Not the governance for the sake of it. And I think going by David's point is the right governance. What's the right governance we need to drive decision making? We've got the great visibility across the business, who's doing what, not functionally, cross-functionally. And then have you got the good execution? Is our PM, engineering, any other community, have they got the right tools, the standards, the process, so we have a consistent way of working? Those are the three things the PMO must provide. I mean, there's multiple things PMO can do, but those three things are basically the pillars where the PMO stands on. Without them, the PMO can't stand. Basically, those are three things PMO should provide.
Yeah, the way I've heard it's told, I mean, whether it's actually a PMO or some sort of linking function that calls itself something different is very simply it's called joining the dots. It's about being able to join the dots, the bits, getting the delivery functions to work with the executive to be able to work with the frontline function. So you're actually creating connectivity in how things get done.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. That's fantastic. So we're more or less at the top of the hour. Are there any more questions? Oh, here we go. We've got one more question. Ashok, you've been so quiet today, my friend. So great. We've got to get at least one Ashok question in. So how do we get the directors to open the doors? Right. So this is the most common question. So over the last month or two, I've been doing a whole bunch of events with Laura Barnard, who's a little bit of a, she's kind of the queen of this kind of stuff. And in those sessions, this is the number one question that everybody has. So it's a slightly different flavor of the one we answered earlier, but how do you get the directors to open the doors to let you in? So David, why don't you kick us off?
It isn't by telling them that you've got real problems getting compliance on your projects and that your reporting's difficult and you need an expensive tool. It's so directors, can we help you achieve greater strategic realization? Do you have line of sight from the strategic objectives that you've told the shareholders you're going to deliver on to all the activity that needs to make that happen? And do you have clarity on the metrics that will show you that you're progressing? So grab their interest, because I would bet money that 99 out of 100 companies can't show that line of sight. Get that interest in that line of sight, and you as the PMO from your key position within the business are perfectly placed to start assisting with that connection of line of sight, in my opinion. Then they'll be interested. Don't tell them that you can improve the reports or get compliance on timesheets better. That's not going to cut it with them.
Alex, anything to add?
No, I think that's exactly, to be honest, I think what's the carrot for them, basically, what drives them, and that exactly the visibility. But most of the execs are craving. They will bite your fingers, just to get the visibility in the business. If you get the visibility, and then the big thing, which is, from my experience, I think is the insight. There's one thing is getting the visibility, is actually telling them what they're looking at. Because that's the big question. Like, you put lots of stuff on the screen, and so it all looks beautiful, but what is he telling me? So making sure the insight is clear, so that you can actually translate, so they can see what's the value added.
And just to emphasize that, so I'm the CEO of a small company, and I have to tell you, my head is full of 101 different things across the business that I'm trying to juggle all at the same time. So when somebody comes to me looking for a decision, if they just give me a load of data, I just can't process it. What I need the insight. I need to understand what the issues are, what the options are, and what decision you need me to make, right? That's what I need as an executive. And so as a PMO, if you're doing that for them, straight away you're adding value, right? Absolutely, Dan. You spent years in the strategy function in big corporates.
Right? So yeah, look, most CEOs are human. Obviously some exceptions with Stuart, but the reality is that you need to understand what it is that their pain points are, and not necessarily with the kind of long sort of swallow the business school words that we like to use. And I mean, I've heard him say it before. He sort of looks across the tech department and he just sort of rubs his head. It's like, there's 100 people here and I just don't know what they do. I can't get anything done. What do they do? Can you do it? And it's that sort of, he wanted to understand what was going on. He wanted to have some influence on it in a way that felt much more specific than existed at the time. So it's if you can offer that mechanism, then, a bit like Alex's quick wins, that'll buy you some time. And then you can worry about your process and your long words and your documentation and all those good things that people like us tell you should do. Yeah. But actually, you want that momentum. You want some scores on the door. And again, back to what does the top guy wants? He probably just wants to be able to stand up at every quarterly annual meeting with the troops and tell them, look, here's a new toy. Here's a project that's landed. Here's a jazz hands thing I can get excited about. He doesn't want to say, this big project progressed by 10%. This one, it's like, no, you want things that land, shiny things.
I think that's the key point over here is there's so many things the business is delivering. Engineering, product, sales, there's multiple things that are happening. It's translating it for them, what does it mean? And that applies the same in the PMO, because PMO does, portfolio management, project execution, process standards, all these good stuff. But what does it mean to the business? So it's translating in a way they can understand, like greater ROI. And we talked about this too, double the ROI, basically. It's translating it for them so they can understand what we're actually getting from money and investment.
Fantastic. So thank you for that. That's a great place to end it, Alexander. Really appreciate it. I just have two very quick things before we all disappear. The first one is an apology to Dan. I was meant to show this slide before he went into the demo. He spent hours on this. I'm trying to work out which one is Dan, though, right in the background there. Can't quite tell. And then the second thing is just a quick heads up. Dan and I will be, and Alexander, actually, we're going to be appearing at the PMO PMO event next year.
This year. Next week.
What did I say? Next week. That's what I meant. Next week. Thank you. So Alexander and I will be running a workshop on the PMO Learn on the first day, and then Dan and I will be there on the second day giving away rubber ducks. So if you want a rubber duck, head there. And then David, you and I are going to be up in Manchester on the 11th of July. Do you want to just say what you're doing up there?
We're presenting a Connecting with the Business presentation to talk more about how we can get the PMO connected with the business, essentially developing some of the themes. And a key component of that has to be visualization of strategic objectives and the prioritization stuff that Dan's explained.
Fantastic. And then, so thank you to the speakers. A huge thank you to Annette for allowing me to put her on the spot. Anybody else, feel free to reach out to any of the speakers here. We're all on LinkedIn. We're all available to help and to answer questions.